Amanda?
Yes, hi. Is it possible to let John go first? It's a little difficult on Zoom.
Sure. John?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Good evening, Council. I'm here with El Segundo for Black Lives today, primarily to support one of our own, Keith Puckett. He has prepared a statement that he would like to read. It may exceed the time. I wanted to request yielding my time to him. If not, I will read his portion.
I would prefer, Mr. Pickhaver, that just so we stick to protocol, if you would read his portion, that would be great, please.
Okay, so Keith is here to speak for himself, but he is not alone. Keith is here to represent all the Black and brown people who live in, work in, or visit El Segundo. People whose rights are violated repeatedly. People who fear for their safety, people who fear for the safety of their children. And he is joined by thousands of El Segundo residents from all backgrounds who demand that this city change for the better now. Keith's son and he moved here almost 12 years ago because he believed El Segundo would be the best place to raise his son. He volunteers his time in the community to help better the community, working with Richmond Street, Center Street, and the middle school, dedicating his time. He filled in as a crossing guard, lunchtime security support, PTA. He's coached the kids in the community in basketball, soccer, t-ball, Noon League, and the Richmond vs. Center All-Star Games. With El Segundo for Black Lives, he's worked directly with ESUSD, Dr. Moore and Dr. Farris to make impactful changes that will help the people of this community. He's dedicated his time and resources to help the homeless population of El Segundo, took part in a book drive to support the kids of Inglewood and Los Angeles. He's a taxpayer and a small business owner. And if we keep the trends keep going, his business isn't going to be a small one for long. He's proud, and we're proud of everything he's done in this community. Keith would say he's grown as a person here. Now, he's recently had 2 run-ins with ESPD. Both, we believe, are cases of racial profiling. In the first case, Keith's friend was sitting in his car on private property with ESPD, decided to harass him while he was visiting Keith's house to mourn the loss of his mother. The officer claimed his friend's plate was lost or stolen. His friend has never called in his plate lost or stolen. It was a vanity plate that he had had for his 3 previous cars. ESPD decided they needed to run 1 plate out of a possible 20 in the alley at any given time. The car a Black man was getting out of. Keith's friend has never gone to the DMV to correct this because he believes ESPD fabricated this story to detain him and gather further info. He's been pulled over twice by ESPD, and only once was he told his plate was lost or stolen. Keith's friend's mother had recently passed, and ESPD pulled him over for no reason the night of the funeral and then continued the harassment with the incident outside of his home a few weeks later. According to the body cam footage, there is no talk about a lost or stolen plate until after the officer mutes his mic for a few minutes while explaining the story to his commanding officer, who later arrived on scene. When he was recently pulled over by LAPD for his registration, he asked the officer if his plate was coming back lost or stolen. The officer told him no. He did not see that in the system at all. Going back to the first incident the night of his mother's funeral, that officer did not mention the lost or stolen plates. Lots of questions still remain unanswered months later. And I'll yield my time.
Thank you, Mr. Pickhaver. Madam
Okay.
Clerk, who's, yeah.
Amanda touched on?
Yes, Amanda touched on. I'd like to continue where John left off. Things got worse when Keith followed up with Chief Whalen. Chief Whalen was not candid with Keith on their email correspondence. Chief Whalen claimed to have reviewed the video. He also claimed Keith's friend's car was moving and that he had been trying to evade police. None of this was accurate. Keith has a copy of the email Chief Whalen sent him explaining the situation. He has redacted the portions of the email that are not accurate and has emailed it to the City Council. Almost 3/4 of the email is not accurate. When Jimmy Pete, Avery Smith, and Keith met with Chief Whalen to discuss the incident, Whalen admitted that he had not reviewed the video and that he had another officer view it. He also admitted that he had not checked with the officer prior to sending his email. On top of that, when the meeting started to review the video and listen to what the officer had said, Chief Whalen stopped the video review and said that there would be no value in watching it as it only told one side. This is despite the fact that that is specifically why Jimmy had set up the call, so that they could review the footage together. Per the body cam footage, the officer said when he came in the alley, he saw Keith's friend exiting the vehicle and hurrying away from the car. The dash cam footage did not support that. When is the El Segundo police going to be candid with the citizens? We expect more from the chief of police. He is supposed to set the tone. He was not accurate on his email exchange. He was not forthcoming during his conversations with Keith. At what point can Keith expect to be treated with respect? Because so far, Keith has not been respected. Now we have the latest incident. Keith's son is getting ready to try out for the El Segundo High School basketball team. Keith is renting out a private gym over on Sheldon so they can train. They had forgotten some of his son's training equipment at the house, so Keith went back to grab it. One of his friends had asked to borrow his car, so Keith was driving his friend's truck in the meantime. The truck was registered to a Carson address. Keith knows he lives in a sundown town. Chief Whalen had told him that in an email. So Keith made sure all the lights were working and that the registration was current. Before leaving the house that night, Keith did a complete walk around of the truck to make sure that everything was up to code. Have any of you ever had to do that? As Keith was pulling up to the four-way stop in front of the El Segundo Brewing Company, Rock and Brew, El Segundo police passed him going in the opposite direction. In his rearview mirror, Keith saw the police car perform a U-turn by the Chevron. Keith took a left on that street and he could see the officer gaining on him. His speed was within the limit and he used his turn signals. The police car followed Keith for over half a mile. When Keith pulled over in front of the gym, the officer turned on his lights. To justify the stop, the officer claimed the light around the license plates were bad. He said he wasn't the ticket writing type and that he was going to let Keith off with a warning. Keith explained to him that he had checked the lights before he left the house and that they were fine. The officer asked if he had been disrespectful to Keith because of the tone Keith was taking with him, and Keith told him that yes, he had been. When he had followed Keith for over half a mile and pulled him over for no reason, that he was being very disrespectful. Keith has emailed pictures of his friend's truck to City Council. As you can see clearly in the pictures, the lights are working, both of them. You can clearly see the plate. If the officer is having issues seeing the plate, it is due to issues with his eyes and not faulty equipment on the truck. I yield the remainder of my time to Keith Puckett.
Thank you, Mrs. Tushin.
Hey, Keith Puckett. Keith?
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I'll be sending those emails as soon as I finish this piece so that you guys have those. So we have another case of El Segundo PD harassing me and treating me like a criminal.
Keith, you broke up. Keith, you broke up a little bit. Wasn't just me, was it?
No, for some
No,
reason.
there. Sorry. Sorry,
on,
Keith,
sir.
that was my fault.
Can you hear
Keith,
me
we'll
now?
start over with time. We'll start over with time, Keith.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
loud and clear.